The thick glass window was cold to the touch. Inside the house, the air was warm and smelled of firewood burned hours before. Outside, the winter night held everything in its grip. Elias kept his hand pressed flat against the window pane, feeling the ice try to cross the transparent barrier. His eyes tried to find the path that led to the water's edge, but there was no path at all. The snow fell continuously and heavily, covering the yard, the dirt slope, and the old wooden deck that rested upon the lake. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories, made to help you relax. And sometimes that's all we really need. Perhaps this is just another one of those tranquil stories, made for relaxation, and sometimes that's all we need. Everything had transformed into an immense, unbroken blank sheet. The outline of the deck where he used to sit to observe the water had disappeared under a shapeless mound of accumulated snow. The lake itself was frozen and invisible, merging with the shores into a boundless landscape. The absence of that space, swallowed by the silent storm, brought a sense of isolation. The resting place was lost beneath the winter's embrace. Elias pulled his hand from the glass, leaving a warm mark that soon began to fog and fade away. He decided he wouldn't wait for the day to brighten to reclaim that space. Dawn was approaching, and he wanted to be out there on the clean, firm deck when the first light of morning touched the white vastness of the lake. He would clear the path, rescue the wood from beneath the ice, and prepare a place to greet the day. The silence of the house was profound, broken only by the sound of his own steps on the plank floor. He walked to the hallway where he kept his winter clothes. The preparation needed to be careful. The air outside would not forgive haste or carelessness. He put on a long-sleeved thermal shirt, feeling the snug fabric embrace his skin. Over it, he pulled on a thick wool sweater, fuzzy and heavy. The scent of clean wool rose to his nose, an aroma that recalled winter itself. Next, he took his lined trousers and put them on. He sat on a wooden bench near the door to pull on his socks. They were long socks, knitted with thick yarn. He pulled the fabric up to his calves, ensuring there were no folds that might bother him later. The dark leather boots came next. Elias slipped his feet inside them and pulled the laces tight, crossing the threads and tying the loops firmly. The weight of the boots on his feet brought a sense of firmness, a solid base to face the slippery ground. He stood up and took the long coat from the hanger. It was a robust piece with a soft lining that protected against the wind. He put on the coat, zipped it to his neck, and adjusted the collar. He placed a dark wool beanie on his head, pulling the edges down to cover his ears. Finally, he slipped his hands into soft leather gloves, flexing his fingers a few times to get used to the slight restriction of movement. He was ready. Beside the door, leaning against the wall, was the snow shovel. Its wooden handle was long and polished from use, and the wide metal blade had slightly worn edges. Elias held the shovel with one hand. With the other, he picked up a kerosene lantern that rested on a small table. He turned the side knob, lifted the glass, and struck a match. The small yellow flame was born trembling and soon stabilized when he lowered the protective glass. The warm light illuminated the space around the door, casting long shadows on the floor.
He turned the cold metal doorknob and pulled the heavy door open. The cold night air immediately invaded the house, bringing with it the clean, damp scent of fresh snow. There was no wind, just the constant, silent fall of thousands of white flakes. Elias took his first step outside, feeling his boots sink into the thick layer that covered the porch. He closed the door behind him. The lantern's light revealed the vastness of the work that awaited him. The night was dark, the air was icy, and the snow continued to fall. But he had a clear goal. He walked to the edge of the porch, raised the shovel, and prepared to clear the first stretch of his path. The porch ended in 3 steps that led to the yard. Elias couldn't see the steps, only a gentle slope of untouched snow. He positioned the lantern on the stone ledge beside him, where its light could illuminate the beginning of his path. The yellow flame created a circle of clarity that made the snowflakes sparkle like silver dust before they touched the ground. He held the shovel with both hands. His right hand stayed near the metal blade to guide it, and his left hand gripped the end of the handle for leverage. He lowered his body slightly and pushed the tool against the base of the snow. The metal cut through the white layer with a dull, soft sound. The snow yielded easily, for it was fresh and light, not yet compacted by time. Elias lifted the loaded shovel and twisted his torso, throwing the white mound to the right side. The sound of snow falling on snow formed a continuous whisper. He repeated the motion: push, lift, discard. With 3 strokes, the first wooden step appeared. Its surface was damp and dark, contrasting sharply with the surrounding whiteness. He cleared the other 2 steps with short, precise movements of the shovel, ensuring the soles of his boots found firm wood before descending into the yard. Stepping onto the level ground, the snow reached almost to his knees. The path to the lake was about 20 long strides, descending a very gentle slope. Elias began to dig a straight trench. He pushed the shovel forward, gathering a large amount of snow on the wide blade, then lifted it, throwing the weight to the sides. The physical effort began to generate warmth under his layers of clothing. Elias's breathing became deeper and more measured. Each time he exhaled, a cloud of white vapor left his mouth and mingled with the cold night air, disappearing moments later. The rhythm of the work established a cadence in the silence of the pre-dawn hours. The scrape of metal on the frozen dirt ground, the sound of effort, the soft thud of snow being piled on the path's edges. He advanced step by step. With each meter gained, the snow walls on the sides of the trench grew a little higher, forming a narrow, clean corridor. The lantern's light, which he had moved to the edge of the path, cast his moving shadow against the white walls. The snow continued to fall from the dark sky. Flakes landed on the shoulders of Elias's coat and the fabric of his beanie, but he didn't stop to shake them off. The warmth of his body prevented the accumulated snow from truly freezing there. He felt the shovel's weight shift with each movement. Sometimes the snow was looser, flying easily when thrown. Other times, he encountered small, denser pockets near the ground, requiring a little more strength in his arms and back. The texture of the shovel's wooden handle was familiar through the leather of his gloves. Elias maintained a firm posture, bending his knees instead of curving his spine, preserving his energy. The scent of the air was sharp and pure. There was no scent of earth nor of plants, only the metallic, clean aroma of extreme cold. The world around him seemed to have been placed on pause, muffled by the thick layer covering the distant trees and the roof of the house behind him.
He reached the halfway point of the path. He paused for a moment, resting his chin on his crossed hands atop the shovel's handle, and took a deep breath. The icy air filled his lungs, bringing a sense of alertness and vividness. He looked back, seeing the straight, dark line he had drawn in the white mantle. The contrast between the scraped earth and the edges of untouched snow was gratifying. It was proof of his progress. Elias picked up the lantern and walked back to the front of the trench, positioning the light further ahead. He resumed holding the shovel. The sound of work began again. The descent towards the lake became a little more pronounced, and he needed to firmly plant his feet with each step to avoid slipping on the exposed, damp earth. The shapeless mound that hid the wooden deck began to take on clearer contours as he advanced. The path was being restored, once again connecting the house to the edge of the sleeping water. The corridor opened in the snow ended exactly where the firm ground met the deck's structure. Elias plunged the shovel into the accumulated snow beside the path, leaving it standing, and picked up the lantern. He raised the light to assess what lay ahead. The rectangular deck, which stretched for a few meters over the frozen lake surface, was now just a gentle, unbroken rise of whiteness. There was no separation between where the wood ended and where the thick ice of the water began. The metal shovel would not be the right tool for this stage. Its hard blade could scratch the old planks or get caught in the gaps between them. Elias needed something gentler. He walked back along the corridor he had just opened. His steps were now silent on the beaten, clean earth. He went to the side of the house, under the eaves of the roof where the snow couldn't reach, and picked up a broom with thick, stiff bristles made of hard straw tied with wire. Upon returning to the lake's edge, the silence seemed even denser. The snow continued to fall, slow and vertical. Elias placed the lantern on the first wooden pillar of the deck, which he had partially cleaned with his hand. The light radiated over the white surface that needed to be swept. He held the broom and took his first step onto the invisible deck. He felt the firm wood beneath his boot sole, hidden by a thick layer of soft ice. He positioned the broom and pushed the bristles against the snow, sweeping from the center to the edges. The sound changed completely. It was no longer the dull cut of the shovel, but a harsh, rhythmic scrape of the hard bristles against the wet, cold wood. With each sweep of the broom, a strip of dark wood appeared. The deck's planks were old, marked by the sun of many summers and the rains of many winters. The dampness of the melting snow made the wood appear almost black under the lantern's light. Elias swept with long, continuous movements. He pushed the snow off the deck's edges, letting it fall onto the frozen lake surface with a soft, crumbling sound. The work required patience. The snow in the corners and around the small mooring posts was more stubborn. He had to use the tip of the broom to poke and loosen the white blocks that clung to the base of the wooden pillars. The scent of wet wood began to rise, mingling with the cold air. It was a deep scent, remembering of damp forests and soaked tree bark. Elias advanced slowly along the structure. He cleared the central area, revealing the straight lines of the planks laid side by side. The gaps between the wood were filled with solid ice, forming thin white lines that outlined the deck's floor. The visual contrast was strong and beautiful. The yellow light of the lantern revealed the grains and knots of the wet wood, returning texture to what was once just a white void. Elias's breath continued to mark the rhythm of the work. White vapor left his lips and rose towards the darkness of the sky. He swept the right half of the deck, pushing the snow onto the frozen water, and then moved to the left half. The sound of the broom echoed very subtly over the lake's ice plain, a solitary sound in the vastness of the night. When he reached the end of the deck, the part that extended furthest over the lake, the layer of snow was a little thinner, swept by previous winds that were now calm. He cleared the last planks with lighter movements. The broom scraped the final wooden edge and pushed the last line of snow into the white abyss below. Elias stepped back 2 paces and lowered the broom. He looked at the completed work. The deck was entirely exposed, a dark, clean, defined rectangle floating upon the infinite whiteness of the frozen lake. The structure had been rescued. The space was once again available, offering a safe and firm place between the earth and the ice. The wooden floor, dark with dampness, lightly reflected the lantern's glow, seeming to breathe again after being freed from its icy weight. With the deck completely free of snow, Elias began to walk slowly over the dark wood. He wanted to feel the stability of the structure beneath his feet. The thick soles of his boots made a hollow, firm sound with each step. The wood was icy and slippery in some spots, requiring him to tread carefully, distributing his body weight evenly. As he approached the left corner of the deck's end, he took a step and felt the surface give slightly. A sharp creak broke the muffled silence of the night. Elias stopped. He moved his right foot, pressing on the specific plank. It sunk about a centimeter and emitted a dry friction sound. The edge of the wood had come loose from the support beam just below. The original nail must have rusted and given way with the expansion of the ice over the previous weeks. That small unevenness was a simple problem, but one that needed fixing. Elias didn't want an unstable floor when he came to sit there later. He left the broom leaning against the deck's side railing and picked up the lantern. The path back to the house was quick, along the corridor he himself had dug in the snow. He passed through the front door and walked along the outer side until he reached a small tool shed attached to the back wall. The shed door creaked open. The smell inside was of cold dust, grease, and aged metal. Elias raised the lantern to illuminate the rustic wooden shelves. He found a small metal box stained with dry paint. As he opened it, the sound of nails clinking together rang clear and metallic. Elias chose 3 long, thick nails with rough bodies, ideal for securing heavy wood. He put the nails in his coat pocket, feeling the cold metal through the glove fabric. On the same shelf, he picked up a short-handled, heavy-headed hammer. Elias closed the shed and made his way back. The snow continued to fall, and some flakes were already lightly dusting the bottom of the trench he had opened, but not enough to hinder him. He arrived back at the deck, walked to the end, and placed the lantern near the loose plank. The yellow light shone directly on the gap where the wood lifted. He knelt on the damp floor. The cold of the wood quickly penetrated the thick fabric of his pants, but he ignored the discomfort. Elias removed the glove from his right hand and put it in his pocket. He needed tactile precision. He plunged his bare hand into the other pocket and pulled out one of the nails. The metal felt incredibly cold against his warm fingers. With his left hand still gloved, he pressed the loose plank down.
aligning it perfectly with the others. With his bare right hand, he positioned the sharp tip of the nail on the wood, a few centimeters beside the old hole where the previous nail had failed. He then picked up the hammer, a familiar weight in his grip. The first strike was gentle, just a tap to embed the nail's tip in the wood grain and hold it upright. The sound was a muffled thud. He moved the fingers that held the nail away and adjusted his grip on the hammer handle. He raised the tool a little higher and delivered a firm strike. The sound of metal striking metal echoed loudly through the cold air, a sharp, clean crack that traveled across the flat surface of the frozen lake and was lost in the distant darkness. He struck again, and once more. With each blow, the nail sunk into the dark wood, pulling the plank down, forcing it against the support beam. The rhythmic sound of the hammer blows seemed to organize the night's silence, marking time and work. With the last strike, the nail's head sunk slightly into the wood surface, leveling perfectly. Elias repeated the process with a second nail, securing it a little further to the side to ensure the plank wouldn't twist in the future. The hammer blows sounded again, precise and sure, a comforting rhythm in the quiet. When he finished, he put the hammer and the remaining nail in his pocket and pulled his right glove back on. His hand was red from the cold, and the glove's lined interior brought immediate relief. He stood up, wiped the dampness from his knees with his hands, and stepped firmly on the plank he had just repaired. There was no creak. The wood was solid, perfectly integrated with the rest of the deck. The structure was whole, secure, and ready to bear the hours to come. With the deck clean and firm, the space was prepared, but the air remained biting. Staying there for long without a heat source would be impossible. Elias looked at the lake's edge, exactly beside the start of the deck, where the earth met the coarse, frozen sand. It was a safe spot, far enough from the wood to pose no risk, yet close enough for the warmth to reach anyone sitting on the structure. He walked to the chosen spot. The snow there was still untouched. Using his boot, he began to push away the white layer, drawing a circle on the ground. He pushed the snow to the edges, creating a small raised ring that would function as a natural barrier against the creeping wind. The bottom of the circle revealed dark stones and earth hardened by ice. Elias returned along the path to the side of the house, where he kept his winter supplies under a thick tarp. He lifted the edge of the tarp, revealing an organized pile of cut firewood. The wood was dry, protected from dampness for months. He picked up 3 medium-sized logs cut in half, showing the light, fibrous interior of the tree. The scent of dry sap and old wood filled the air near him. He placed the logs under his left arm. With his right hand, he picked up a small wicker basket that contained thin kindling, pine bark shavings, and a handful of dry moss he had collected in the autumn. It was the starter material, essential for getting the fire to catch quickly in the extreme cold, a crucial first step. Before returning, he needed to make one last stop at the tool shed. From there, he retrieved a cast iron brazier. It was a heavy piece, shaped like a shallow basin, supported by 3 short, thick legs. The iron was so cold it seemed to burn through his leather gloves. He arranged the firewood logs inside the iron basin, held the brazier by the edges with both hands, and the wicker basket hung from his pinky finger. The weight was considerable, and he walked back with slow, calculated steps.
Upon reaching the circle he had cleared in the snow, he lowered his body and placed the iron brazier in the center. Its 3 metal legs settled on the frozen stones, ensuring stability. The dark iron contrasted sharply with the white snow around it. Elias removed the logs from inside the basin and placed them on the ground within reach of his hands. He began to prepare the fire bed. First, he lined the bottom of the iron brazier with the dry moss. The moss looked like a fragile gray sponge. Over it, Elias organized the pine bark shavings, creating a small, loose pyramid. The scent of resin from the bark was strong and sweet, a promise of quick burning. Next, he took the thinner kindling from the basket. He broke them in half with his hands. The sound of the thin wood snapping was dry and crisp, like tiny bones breaking. He positioned the kindling over the moss and bark, crossing them to leave space for air to circulate. A fire needs to breathe to be born. Finally, he took 2 of the smaller logs and placed them on the sides of the small kindling pyramid, forming a shelter that would protect the initial flame and, at the same time, begin to warm the thicker wood. He worked with precise movements. There was no rush. Preparing the fire was a ritual of patience. Every piece of kindling had its place. Every piece of tree bark had a purpose. Elias looked at the arrangement inside the iron basin. The structure was perfect. The cold pre-dawn air passed silently over the brazier without disturbing the pile of dry wood. The scene was set. The metal, the wood, and the oxygen awaited only the initial heat to transform the icy darkness of that shore. Elias reached into the inner pocket of his coat, near his chest, where his body's warmth kept things dry and warm. He pulled out a small wooden matchbox. The box was slightly worn at the edges. He opened the cardboard drawer and took out a single thick matchstick, its red head intact. He knelt down beside the iron brazier. The wind was completely absent, which would make the task easier. He held the box with his left hand and the matchstick with his right. With a quick, firm movement, he struck the match against the side striking surface. The friction produced a short hiss, followed by the crack of the spark. The yellow and bluish flame instantly sprang forth, illuminating Elias's face and the brazier's edges. The smell of burnt sulfur was quick and sharp. He protected the small flame with his cupped left palm and brought it close to the center of the wooden pyramid. He touched the tip of the lit match to the dry moss at the base of the arrangement. The moss didn't hesitate. It absorbed the fire immediately, glowing an intense red and spreading the flame to the pine bark shavings just above. Elias drew his hand back and watched. The pine bark began to crackle. The resin contained within them boiled for a second before transforming into a bright, agile orange flame. The fire climbed, licking at the thin kindling. The sound of the fire being born was a soft crackle, a constant murmur that began to break the vast silence of the frozen lake. A thin column of gray light smoke rose straight towards the dark sky, smelling of pine and warmth. As the kindling caught fire, warmth began to radiate out from the brazier. Elias felt the temperature change in the air near his face. He waited until the flames were strong enough and carefully pushed the 2 larger wooden logs closer to the center. The fire embraced the thick wood, darkening its outer bark before beginning to consume it. The crackling sound became more frequent and robust. With the fire established and secure within the iron basin, Elias stood up. The warmth was already beginning to melt the snowflakes that came too close to the brazier, transforming them into water droplets before they even touched the ground. He needed the last element to complete the space.
He walked back to the house, passing along the path, now illuminated not just by the lantern on the deck, but by the flickering glow of the fire at his back. He entered the porch and picked up a folding wooden chair that leaned near the door. It was a sturdy chair with a seat and backrest of thick, stretched canvas. Over the backrest, he draped a heavy wool blanket, a plaid pattern in shades of dark green and black. He carried the chair and the blanket back to the lake. Upon reaching the deck, he opened the chair with a simple movement. The canvas stretched with a dry sound. He positioned the chair on the clean planks facing the white immensity of the frozen lake, and at an angle where the warmth of the fire just beside it on the shore could reach his legs and torso. He arranged the wool blanket over the seat, letting part of it fall over the backrest to protect his back from the cold coming from behind. He ran his hand over the thick wool fabric, smoothing out the folds. The texture was rough, but it promised to retain all the necessary warmth, a comforting thought. He walked to the lantern, which still burned on the deck railing, and dimmed the flame by turning the side knob, leaving only a minimal glow. The main light was now from the fire in the brazier. The flames danced over the firewood, casting moving shadows on the deck planks and the surrounding snow. The space was ready. The path was open. The wood was firm. The fire was lit, and the resting place awaited. The night's arduous work had ended. He walked to the canvas chair and sat down slowly. The wood of the seat yielded a little under his weight, settling in. He pulled the ends of the thick wool blanket and wrapped them around his legs and hips. The heavy fabric formed an impenetrable cocoon against the cold air. He sunk his back into the backrest, relaxing the shoulders that, until a few minutes ago, had borne the weight of the shovel and hammer. To his left, the fire in the iron brazier had reached a steady rhythm. The orange and yellow flames enveloped the firewood logs, transforming the dark bark into fine, glowing ashes. The heat radiated in gentle waves, brushing against the fabric of his coat and warming the side of his face. The sound of crackling wood was a comforting sound, a living companion in the midst of the still immensity. The smoke rose straight and dissipated into the upper air, carrying with it the dense, pleasant scent of burnt pine. He looked ahead. The sky above the lake began to change texture. The deep, opaque darkness of pre-dawn was yielding space to a very dark, almost indigo blue. The snow had stopped falling. The air was clean, free of moving flakes, revealing crystal-clear visibility. The frozen lake stretched before him like an infinite, flat plain, completely white and untouched. There were no marks, no tracks, just the vastness of the ice covered by snow, meeting the dark line of trees on the opposite shore, far in the distance. Elias reached his hand into the large pocket of his coat and pulled out a matte metal thermos bottle. He unscrewed the lid, which served as a cup, and pressed the central button. A stream of dark, steaming tea poured into the cup. The vapor rose in dense spirals, carrying the strong aroma of dark herbs and wet earth. He held the cup with his gloved hands, feeling the warmth of the liquid pass through the metal and leather, reaching the tips of his fingers. He brought the cup to his lips and took a small sip. The tea flowed warm down his throat, spreading a wave of warmth from the inside out, meeting the fire's heat that came from the outside in. The contrast between the hot liquid and the biting air he breathed was invigorating. He lowered the cup and rested his hands in his lap, taking a moment to rest. The transition from night to day happened in absolute silence. The light didn't appear all at once. It came as a slow seepage. The dark blue of the sky began to fade, transforming into a pearly gray. As the sky brightened, the white of the lake seemed to gain its own luminosity. The reflection of the soft morning light on the untouched snow created a diffuse glow, eliminating the harsh shadows of the night. The distant trees, once just a dark mass, began to reveal their individual contours, their branches heavy and curved under the weight of the accumulated snow. The silence was so profound that Elias could hear his own breath and the faint hiss of sap boiling in one of the logs in the brazier. There was no wind to sway the branches, no birds awake, no sound of running water beneath the thick ice. The world was immobilized in a state of perfect peace. Elias pulled his hand from the glass, leaving a warm mark that soon began to fog and fade away. He decided he wouldn't wait for the day to brighten to reclaim that space. Dawn was approaching, and he wanted to be out there, on the clean, firm deck when the first light of morning too. Elias leaned his head against the chair's fabric and breathed in the clean morning air. The smell of smoke was now very subtle, almost imperceptible, mingled with the damp freshness of the ice. He observed the outline of the deck where his feet rested. The dark, clean planks, which he had swept with such care, contrasted sharply with the surrounding white. The nail he had hammered kept the wood firm and level. The path he had opened in the snow, the trench with white edges that ascended to the house, a straight line of effort and intention that now seemed to organically belong to the landscape. He took another sip of the tea. The liquid was still almost boiling. The brightness increased another degree. The gray of the sky began to take very pale shades of pink and violet near the horizon, where the still invisible sun began to announce its presence. The soft light touched the lake's surface, and tiny ice crystals on the snow sparkled for an instant, like glass dust scattered over the white plain. Elias remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the horizon, allowing the morning silence to fill the space he had prepared. The sun did not appear as a sphere of fire on the horizon, but as a white, cold brightness that spread from behind the thin layer of high clouds. Morning settled in completely, illuminating every detail of the snow-covered shore. Daylight revealed the true color of things, the very dark green of the distant pines, the grayish-brown of the deck planks, the black iron of the brazier, and the dazzling white of the frozen lake. The fire in the iron basin had diminished. The tall, agile flames were gone. What remained in the center of the brazier was a mound of red, pulsing embers covered by a thin layer of white ashes. The embers emitted a dense, heavy, constant warmth that heated the air near the ground and kept Elias's boots comfortable. Occasionally, an ember crackled with a very low sound, and a small point of red light glowed more intensely before fading. Elias finished the last sip of his tea. The metal cup was now just lukewarm. He screwed it back onto the top of the thermos bottle with a slow movement. The sound of metal rubbing against metal was the only artificial noise in the morning's stillness. He placed the bottle on the wooden floor beside the chair leg. He felt no rush to get up. The cold air touched his face, but the rest of his body was perfectly insulated and warm beneath the layers of wool, leather, and canvas. He looked at the path opened in the snow, the trench with white edges that ascended to the house. The work was done. The connection between the warm shelter and the vastness of the lake had been restored. The physical effort of the pre-dawn hours had dissolved, leaving behind only the feeling of a well-tended space.
Elias leaned his head against the chair's fabric and breathed in the clean morning air. The smell of smoke was now very subtle, almost imperceptible, mingled with the damp freshness of the ice. He kept his eyes open, observing the stillness of the white world before him. The embers beside him continued to radiate their silent warmth. He remained there, sitting on the firm deck, perfectly at peace with the silent morning that had just been born.